The Minnesota Timberwolves rocked the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 3. Do we belatedly have a series out west? We're going to talk about it right now on Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are locked on to NBA Game Night, every game, every night. My name is Gavin Schall, co-host of the Locked On Knicks podcast, and joining me as a member of a class action lawsuit against the Indiana Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton for inflicting emotional distress on our respective podcasts. It's Danny Cunningham of the Locked On Cavs podcast, filling in for Rylan Stiles, who is in the cold of Minnesota. And man, he's probably not feeling too good right now because the Timberwolves owned the Oklahoma City Thunder. On tonight's episode, we're going to talk about the Wolves' decimation, what it means for the series going forward. We'll look ahead to Knicks-Pacers Game 3. Does New York have any chance of coming back, putting together a similar performance? Man, my audience sure hopes so. And we'll wrap up with some fun buy or sell, including touching on your Cavs, Danny. Before we get into all that, I want to remind everyone that tonight's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Danny, we are going to head out west. First of all, man, I should introduce you. How you doing, dude?
I'm good, man. I cannot wait to, and I know this is not what we're leading with, I cannot wait to talk about Pacers next, because Game 1, and obviously Game 3 will be tonight if you're watching this on Sunday. Game 1, when Nesmith hit that three from the right wing, I wanted to text you, just like, first time? This is your first time doing this? Like, I know how this ends. I've seen this before. We meet on Tuesdays, though, everybody that is upset about the way the Pacers have won. So if you and Alex want to hang out with me and Camille and the folks over at Locked On Bucks, we've got room for you.
Someone in the Locked On NBA chat, it might have been you, sent the James Franco Gallo memes, and I was just like, yep, that's where I am. Super. Thanks for that. All right, let's head out west to someone who's happier than either of us, Ben Beacon, after the Wolves finally get a win.
The Minnesota Timberwolves blow out the OKC Thunder by 42 points in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast. Minnesota was up by 20 points at the end of the first quarter, holding the Thunder to just 14 first quarter points. Minnesota up 31 points at halftime, and they closed it out with a 42-point win. The name of the game in this one was ball pressure early and often for Minnesota, much more aggressive in their pick and roll coverage, forcing SGA and other ball handlers for OKC out toward the timeline. Rudy Gobert aggressive, hedging in pick and roll action, and Minnesota just overall overwhelming OKC on that end of the floor. And then on top of that, Minnesota shot 50% from outside the arc in this game. They forced 15 OKC turnovers, and Minnesota had 6 steals as a team. Again, many of them leading to fast break opportunities the other way. They held SGA to just 14 points on 13 shots. But Wolves fans at Target Center getting the chance to chant free throw merchant only a couple of times. SGA only got 4 free throws because he only played 28 minutes in a blowout. Ant was great for Minnesota, among others. Ant had 30 points on 17 shots. Julius Randle showed up 24 points on 15. The bench was awesome. A well-rounded, impressive, much-needed win for Minnesota. Game 4 comes up on Monday. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
Danny, the numbers across the board for the Wolves, just ridiculous in this one. Biggest deficit at 31 points. They end up getting it to 10 more than that Oklahoma City faced all season. Believe it was their first or their worst first half turnover differential the entire year. First time they've been outshot by 28% or more in the first half of a ball game. SGA, like nothing early on in this game. Like just a rout from the get-go. We heard some of the highlights from Ben. What in your mind was the difference tonight for the Timberwolves?
So the difference for me was, and I saw this floating around, I've not verified it. I have no reason to believe it's not true. But Oklahoma City lost the turnover battle 14-10 in this game against Minnesota. That is the first time since March 25th they have lost the turnover battle in a game. That is staggering because as we record this, it is May 24th. There have been a lot of basketball games played between March 25th and right now. And to go that stretch of time as an NBA team and not have one game where the other team turns you over more than you turn them over, one, I think it's a testament to what you've been able to do on both sides of the ball, where they do a great job protecting the basketball, and they do, as we have seen, a better job than anybody at forcing turnovers. So the fact that they kind of got that script flipped on them a little bit was thing number one that stood out to me. And I thought the folks on the broadcast over at ABC made a really great point about the pickup points that Minnesota was using defensively, wherein, Ben talked about kind of pressuring up on some of the other guys, but on SGA, they were actually a little bit further back because he's not somebody that they're worried about taking 3-pointers. They know the spots that he wants to get to, which do include the free throw line, as many people in Minnesota alluded to during this game, during his, I think, only 4 trips to the line that he took, but he wants to get to the mid-range. He wants to get to the basket. And I thought that Minnesota they changed their defensive strategy to make those things more difficult. And they were willing to give up the thing that he really doesn't want to do all that often. Why it took 2 games to get to that, I don't know. But I thought that was a much better defensive strategy from them. And ultimately, like, it's so easy to look at this and say, oh, the Timberwolves scored 143 points. Their offense was great. And it was, but the defense was the story for them. Their defense was better than their offense tonight. And that is saying something, again, considering they scored 143 points, shot 57% from the floor, 50% from 3, and 13 of 17 from the line. That doesn't matter. But their defense was the story for me, Gavin.
Yeah, I'm with you. They played a style much closer to how the Denver Nuggets, to some extent, shut down the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think Jason Timpf had the stat on his post-game show tonight. Oklahoma City against Denver, a 113 offensive rating through 2 games against Minnesota. They had a 120 offensive rating, which is shocking when you look at the personnel for both these teams. Right? Minnesota's longer, more athletic, more vicious defensively, like every just healthier than the Nuggets are, deeper than the Nuggets are. There's no reason outside of just shooting variance that Oklahoma City should be dramatically better against the Nuggets than against the Timberwolves. And for the first time, like Chris Finch, I kind of said, screw it on their base defense, leaned into that style, sort of like dared SGA to like say, hey, you're going to be spraying it out all day. We're going to see if these guys can hit shots. To me, from the get-go of these playoffs, that would be the story for Oklahoma City. Could their role players hit enough threes? Obviously, they shot well. They played well. Jalen Williams, the J-Dub, in particular, the first few games, but they weren't necessarily asked to do it under a ton of pressure consistently, at least in game 2 where they raced out to a big lead. Timberwolves in this game turned that up, and it was Anthony Edwards, I think, like setting the tone. Rudy Gobert in the first quarter, 2 different steals at the level. Anthony Edwards gets his first 2 dunks of the series early on, according to our guys on the Locked On Wolves postcast. Just the energy he brought from the very beginning of this game on top of the shot making. He outscores Oklahoma City by himself in the first quarter with 16 points. Also had 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Thought his ability to, and Julius Randle as well. I mean, it was some shot making from Julius Randle, but both those guys consistently getting deep into the paint, consistently drawing 2 or 3 guys, spray outs. Ended up with Naz Reid getting 2 threes. Jaden McDaniels got a 3 off one. I thought Ant's decision making on those was so good, on top of the fact that he just athletically at time overwhelmed Oklahoma City. But we have another Locked On host we have to get to, Rylan Stiles. He hasn't had to do too many of these this season where he does a post-game short. He's not anything but smug. I love you, Rylan. Looking forward to talking next week. Let's talk to him right now.
The Oklahoma City Thunder started out on a 4-0 run and never recovered after they let go of the rope. It took them a couple minutes of a scoring drought to start the first quarter after opening up the game on a 4-0 run. They never regained the lead after Minnesota took it over, and the Timberwolves just outright blew them out of this game. The Thunder couldn't shoot. The Thunder couldn't protect the ball. The Thunder couldn't rebound. The Thunder couldn't get into any offense. The Thunder couldn't defend. The Thunder couldn't do anything it takes to win basketball games. And anytime you do that, especially against a good team in the Western Conference Finals, you're going to get blown out. Let's face it, the Thunder couldn't have beaten Eisenhower High School tonight with the kind of effort that they gave, but that's why you play a series. It's not based on the 1-game sample size. Let's see how OKC responds in Game 4, because if they do not throw a massive counterpunch, you got a series heading back to OKC, tied at 2.
Danny, this was just such a shockingly poor performance for a team that statistically, at least in terms of net rating, was the best regular season team, the most dominant one anyways, we've seen in NBA history. And I think the tendency when something like that happens is to just sort of throw it out the window, right? Say this was a fluke. Oklahoma City hasn't looked like this all year. We have an incredibly large sample size of them being anything but the team we saw tonight. What do you think lingers from this game for Oklahoma City, and how do they kind of start to bounce back from it?
I don't think anything does. I think that these games are so independent of one each other in the postseason. And I will use the Cavs-Pacers series as an example to go back to that one, just because I think there are some pretty good examples of it. So the Pacers win Game 1 because they shoot lights out. They win Game 2 because, as you well know, Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers have devil magic that they can use to come back from down by any deficit within the last minute of a game. It doesn't matter. And then in game 3, the Cavs control the entire game on the road in Indianapolis. They win that game by 26 points, and it was never close. Like, they were just in control essentially the entire time. So you would think, okay, well, the Cavs can say they've been the better team in this series and they've gotten unlucky. And then game 4 happens and the Pacers are up by 41 points at halftime. And then game 5 and the Cavs have a 19-point lead. Like, these games, they do not need to be connected. I think the Thunder have been the best team the entire year. They've been, maybe you could say, okay, they've not been great away from Oklahoma City in the playoffs. I think they're just 3-3 in road games, and all 3 wins they have, the 2 over Memphis and the 1 they had in Denver, close games for the most part. So you could say, okay, that could be the issue here. But I don't think that because they lost this game by such a wide margin, game 4 should be looked at any differently. Like when our friends at FanDuel put out, I'm sure it's out at this point, but when they put out what this game opens at, the betting line, I would think OKC's probably going to still be a slight favorite. Like, overreacting to this, overreact at your own peril, I think is probably the appropriate thing to say.
I think that's a good message for life in general. When we come back, some final thoughts on this one, just because I want to give due credit to Minnesota here. Make sure we hit on everyone. Then we're going to preview Knicks-Pacers before we get into some buy and sell. All that coming up next on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it so easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Tomorrow for Knicks-Pacers, the trends, you just heard Danny mention what happened in Cavs-Pacers Game 3. You just heard what happened in Minnesota OKC Game 3. The trend, I think, would be to bet on the Knicks, but I think this team might just be a little bit broken. I might put a little money down on the Indiana Pacers getting on the brink of closing this series out. If you agree with me, make sure you head over to FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. If you head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, what's up, guys? We are back on Locked On NBA Game Night. Just some closing thoughts from this one, because, man, I was just this Minnesota team outside of the Knicks, who I obviously follow on a daily basis. They've been my favorite team to watch this entire season. Like, I love the mix of personalities. I love the erraticism. Like, you don't always know what you're to get from these guys on an individual basis night to night. But when it comes together, it is just incredibly potent because they have that length, because I think they have two of, maybe this is lofty, but I'm going to say it too, the 12 or so best shot makers on planet Earth between Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. I think Randle, wrongly, because of his reputation, does not always get put into those conversations tonight. Like, even the end of this game, it's in garbage time at the start of the fourth quarter. He's hitting fadeaway bankers, threes with guys right in his eye. Ant tonight, I thought a big shift that just hasn't really been there in the playoffs is the pull-up three-point shooting. Like, this side of Steph Curry, he was the best three-point shooter in basketball this season, and that was sort of the secret weapon, right? The elevation when defenders are even in drop to a tad, anything but a clean switch, he's going up, and over again, you saw iHeart and Chet just a little bit below the level. It was reasonably good defense, and Ant would just rise up and hit it. Naz Reid, you got to see the skill set. I mentioned those threes that Ant set him up for, but 2 drives on Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren for back-to-back layups. Dante DiVincenzo made each of his 2 threes. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, his eyes lit up on one play when A.J. Mitchell came in to start the second half, took him to the rim for a would-be and one if he had made the free throw. And how about Terrence Shannon Jr. finishes this one with 15 points in 13 minutes. I'm going way back to the regular season, Danny, but he was a key fixture in that game where they sat, I think Ant and I think Julius was out down the stretch, and they came back and beat Oklahoma City with their deep bench, and he's confident against this team. Hyper athletic rookie out of Illinois, and he comes in the second quarter and I think kind of just punches this one wide open. As much as that first quarter was dominant, 9 points in 3 minutes. In just 3 minutes per Opta stats, he sets the Wolves rookie record for points off a bench in a single game in playoff history. That's ridiculous. Had 2 different steals, one on Caruso, sliding with him to force a turnover, stripped J-Dub, and went coast to coast. I just saw it a really impressive few minutes. And Minnesota shows you, when all these guys show up and Chris Finch has them playing with that fervor, even against the best team in the league, they're terrifying.
Right. And I think the intensity level they brought too.
Yeah.
There's not a stat that that like quantifies that they played with a much better intensity level than I think we saw in games 1 and 2 from them in Oklahoma City. Shannon Jr. was awesome. I felt, and there are always these moments when you're watching a game and a certain guy does something, you're just like, you know what, that team's not going to lose tonight. For me, it was him, because he scores, what was it, 7 points in 4 minutes or 9 points in 4 minutes with Anthony Edwards on the bench. And if you're getting from Minnesota that type of production from somebody you are not expecting anything from, like, you cannot realistically, if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you can't go into a conference finals game and bank on production from him. But when you get it like that, you're not going to lose that game. And with that, the shot making, I think maybe even more so than the shot making, the shot creation, I thought was better in this game. Like, the Wolves had been getting statistically wide open threes in the first 2 games of the series, but they never felt comfortable, if that makes sense. Like, it didn't feel as if they were creating comfortable threes. Tonight, it felt like they were creating comfortable threes. They were able to knock down good looks. And also, at some point, good shooters are going to make shots. Dante DiVincenzo, really good shooter, made a couple of shots. Nas, really good shooter. Anthony Edwards, who went 1 of 9 in one of the other games. Like, those guys were going to make shots, and it just felt like it all kind of came back at once. This was a really, really impressive performance. I, again, wonder how much will carry over from game 3 to game 4. But the Wolves should be thrilled with how they played. Is this the blueprint? I don't know. If any team, if you shoot 50% from 3, you're going to win more often than not. So maybe that's just the blueprint. Hey, make all your threes and you'll be fine.
Look, Cleveland did it a ton this year. Indiana doing it to the Knicks right now. It's hard. It's hard to compete with. Oklahoma City in the third quarter. This one cuts it down to 22. Ant just leads, like, I think it was an 11-0 run. It highlighted that, turned the corner against a double team, reverse and SGA. Dude is a marvel. Incredibly fun to watch. Shout out to the Wolves fans. That was a real moment. Let's flip to my neck of the woods. Knicks-Pacers. I just did a big pod with our buddy Tony East previewing game 3. And lo and behold, about 30 minutes after we recorded, Danny, we spent all of it talking about hypothetical lineup changes, and we get as close to confirmation as we're going to get because Tom Thibodeau is never going to say it outright, even pregame. But Ian Begley had a report that the Knicks are, quote, strongly considering, which in Tom Thibodeau talk usually means 150%, starting Mitchell Robinson tomorrow. What do you make of that potential adjustment for the New York Knicks?
So one of the things that I had planned on using in a story in a potential Cavs-Boston series, because I thought the Cavs, if both teams got there and both teams were healthy, I thought they were going to need to make a starting lineup change. And Kenny Atkinson said when the Miami Heat made a starting lineup change in their first round series, that's like the ultimate adjustment. That is the adjustment that you go to when you don't have anything left. And I do think this is the right move for New York to go to, because if you look at the numbers when Mitchell Robinson's been on, that's when the Knicks have been really good. I do think that he provides something that the Pacers really struggle with, because I don't look at this Pacers team as some uber talented group. Like, yes, Tyrese Halliburton is awesome. Pascal Siakam was fantastic in game 2. They've got some really strong role players, but are they just like that much more talented than the New York Knicks? Absolutely not. But I think he provides something that nobody else on the Knicks roster does. And I think that this is a necessary but desperate adjustment that the Knicks do need to make. I'm not saying they're going to go out and win game 3 because Mitchell Robinson starts, but I do think that this puts them in a better position, certainly defensively, because what they have to be able to do on that end of the floor, I think, are some things that Karl Anthony Towns struggles with. And I think part of the reason why the Knicks are down in this series, like, Jalen Brunson's been awesome offensively, but when your point guard and your center are both not good defenders, it's really hard to win at this level. And I think that's part of the reason why the Knicks are where they are.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. Anyone who listens to Locked On Knicks consistently, shout out to you guys if you're tuning in. We'll throw up a little hearing these numbers because I say them all the time. But for a national audience, the Knicks starting lineup has not just been a net negative in these playoffs, and in fact, in terms of net rating, they have the worst net rating of any starting group on a conference finals team since 2008. That's that via our friend Jeff Rasmussen at the Hot Hand Theory podcast. But so that's terrible. They've been a negative since Christmas, Danny. Like this starting lineup has been bad forever. Tom Thibodeau, not one who's comfortable making changes very quickly, has refused to adjust. I think this is probably not the optimal starting lineup shift, which I think would be starting Deuce McBride, because to your point, if you are going to play Cat and you are going to let him get hunted defensively, even with Mitchell Robinson out there, they're still going to hunt him relentlessly. And even though he held up fairly well on switches, I think they'll still have a lot of success, because even when Cat slides his feet, even when he sticks with a guy, a bunch of times he'll end up committing a stupid foul or making a late mistake, or they'll find the right matchup and go at him and have some success on him. You better be optimizing him offensively. And it is very clear at this point that when Josh Hart is on the floor and they can essentially leave two guys in the paint, you are not optimizing Cat on offense. Deuce unlocks that. He's a better defensive option in Tyrese Halliburton, I think, than Mikal Bridges is. So that would be my change. But Mitchell Robinson was probably the best player on either team in the first half of this game. He had the same case, honestly, in game one. Was responsible for something like 8 offensive rebounds for the Knicks in about a 16-minute stretch. Defensively, he looked like an all-defense guy, if not a defensive player of the year type guy. In terms of his ability to switch, was holding up really well on basically any time Indiana went at him. So I do think he'll still be very helpful. I do think him and Cat together with all, and you know this as someone who just watched this Indiana team for 5 games, with all the different actions Indiana runs, like ghost screens, staggered screens, like it becomes complicated if you have 2 7-footers out there navigating it, even if one of them is Mitch. So that is my concern heading into this one. But let's pay some respect to the Pacers, right? This is a national podcast. They're up 2-0. And to your point, like maybe not on paper overwhelming from a talent perspective. And yet there is just this innate fearlessness there. And it all stems from Halliburton. Everyone makes the extra pass. The shooting is just incredible across the board. And they just keep coming. And as the Knicks found out in game 1, as the Cavs found out in one of those major comebacks, they eventually seem to break everyone.
Yeah, they are a team that is very, very talented. Don't get me wrong. They are. Tyrese Halliburton is an all-NBA player. Pascal Siakam at his best is an all-NBA player. Like, they're not short on talent. But they're also, when you're really talented and you are greater than the sum of your parts, which I think the Pacers are, just like the fit that they have, the style of play that they have, it feels like everybody on that Pacers roster is being maximized. And that is about as big of a compliment as I can give to an NBA team. They sort of are like a college team, to where they have their own distinct style. They play basketball a different way than almost every other NBA team. And I'm not saying they're a college team in the fact that they're not good, because I don't think college basketball teams are good. I'm saying they're a college team in that they're unique. And that is something that makes them special. They have, because even on nights when Tyrese Halliburton isn't at his best, the Pacers still play his style of basketball. And I think that really sort of speaks to the impact that he has. And that's part of the reason why they're in the position they are, because Halliburton's not been great in every single game, right? He's not on this out of the world stretch of basketball in the first 46 minutes of any games, and then the last 2 minutes have been a different story. But he has just been able to mold this Pacers team into a version that is good enough to win a title. And I think so much of that is just because this group fits together so well. Their talents are all maximized, and they all have a buy-in and a belief that if you're down by 12 with 2 minutes left, guess what? It doesn't matter, because you can come back and win. If you're down by 7 with 43 seconds left, it doesn't matter. You can come back and win. And all of those things combined are incredibly dangerous.
They remind me of the Suns in the early 2000s. Obviously, the pace is a common trait there, but Halliburton, like, maybe this is too lofty, but I'm terrified of the guy right now, so I don't care. Like, it's like him, Steph Curry, Steve Nash over the last 20 years to me, in terms of guys, to your point, who just dictate with their style, and that style results in a league best offense, right? And it's not brute force. It is just like this infectious, like his combination of shooting, fearlessness, and always making the right play, like just historical assist to turnover ratio guy. And like, to your point, like athletically, like there isn't, maybe outside of like his vision and his balance, like there isn't a trait there that stands out to you. And yet he always gets to his spot. He's always confident. And it is true across the board for this team. And unlike those Suns teams, and more similar to the Warriors teams, there's like some real deal athleticism, physicality, and size on the wings. And of course, inside with Miles Turner, that I think makes it all work and makes this team capable of winning an NBA championship. We'll see if they can get it done. We're going to talk final adjustments for game 3 for both these teams, and then we're going to get into some buy or sell to wrap up this edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. All right, what's up, guys? We are back, third and final segment here on Locked On NBA Game Night, getting you ready for Game 3 of Knicks-Pacers. Danny, outside of the starting lineup adjustment for the New York Knicks, do you see any other adjustments they need to make? Anything Indiana needs to do to essentially end this series?
I mean, I can't just sit here and say, well, play better, make more shots. I think that you have to have a 20-point lead. I think you have to control the game. I think that you have to force Tyrese Haliburton to defend for 48 minutes. Like, there are a lot of these things that I can sit here and say, yeah, do this, but it's really much easier said than done.
Sure.
This Pacers team is really good. They're really tough. Going into that building is going to be a challenge for the New York Knicks on Sunday night in Game 3. They can do it. Like, as I mentioned, I don't think that the Pacers are just this team that is immensely more talented than New York is. This is still a series, and I'm not picking the Knicks to win this series. I didn't pick them before the series. Certainly not picking them now, but the New York Knicks winning 4 of their next 5 games is not some crazy thought, just the same way that I felt that way about the Cavs in that series, and they lost in 5. So I could see that this series ends in a similar facet. But what do you think they need to do? You're the one that has been covering this team all year.
Yeah, I mean, optimizing their lineups is the single most important things. If you're not starting Deuce, he should be playing 30-plus minutes. Josh Hart, I think, has to be out there for more like 20 minutes. I do think he'll be a lot better coming off the bench, injecting some energy, hopefully pushing some pace himself, because the Knicks have been very effective in transition in this series. Because Indiana kept the turnovers down so effectively, they haven't got out, and that leads me to OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges for that matter. I think a defining quality in the Knicks' first 2-round wins was the event creation defensively for those two, like deflections, blocks, consistently getting the Knicks out of transition. Mikal Bridges ended the first 2 games against the Celtics with a steal and famously a deflection of a Jason Tatum pass. They have not been able to do that so far in this series, and that's a credit to Indiana and just how clean some of the looks Indiana's gotten. But those two, at their best, are all NBA caliber defenders. I think they need more of that. I think Deuce being out there, who's probably the 3rd best guy in that capacity, will certainly help a lot. Pairing Cat with Deuce again, so you're maximizing his offense, and even if he's getting hurt on defense, he's doing enough on the other end, like he did in Game 1, where he had the best scoring game of his playoff career. To your point, keep hunting Hallie on volume. Like they did that more in Game 2. I would continue to turn it up. Mikal Bridges can really go at him, and Indiana's sort of trying to bait that. I would lean into it if I were the Knicks. Hunt Obi Toppin when he's on the floor. Jalen Brunson did it once. Easy bucket. Have to change how they're guarding TJ McConnell. The Knicks lost Game 2 at the start of the 4th quarter, 13-4 Pacers run, because they kept going over on McConnell screens, which you just don't need to do because he's not shooting from very deep, and McConnell picked them apart, and the back line of their coverage was just disastrous. So better lineups, maybe even bringing DeLon Wright as a defensive guard. I think the Pacers are going to attack Mitch a little bit less, so you're going to have to adjust for that. I think it's going to take a really perfect game or a perfect series of games for the Knicks to make this one competitive, just because they've been very mistake prone in their defensive communication all year. And there's not a team in the NBA more equipped to take advantage of that than Indiana. But let's end with some rapid fire buy or sell. The Boston Celtics, Danny, do they trade over under 1.5 starters this summer?
I'm going to say they trade over 1.5 starters. I think Drew Holiday will be traded. I think one of Kristaps Porzingis or Derek White will be traded as well. I think 2 is that number. Where are you at on that one?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think 2 is the number. I think it would probably be KP. Obviously, the unknown there is whatever post-viral illness he's dealing with. First of all, best wishes to KP, because that's obviously horrible. Where is his health at? Because I do think he is such a force amplifier for the Celtics team that if he's going to get back to himself, then you want to keep the guy. I understand if they want someone a little bit more reliable, because obviously even outside of this, he hasn't been able to stay on the court. I personally think it would be insane to trade Derek White. He is just the perfect 3rd piece around Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So I would not do that if I were them. This one, if you want to go a little longer on, closer to home, obviously had to check in on your Cavs. Do you think Cleveland, or let me say it correctly, buy or sell? Do you think the Cavs need to make a big move this summer?
I think they need to make a move. Buy. I think they need to make a move. I think it kind of depends on your definition of big. If I am Cleveland, I am listening on Jarrett Allen. I would not be listening on Evan Mobley. I would not be listening on Donovan Mitchell. I'll pick up the phone for Darius Garland. I personally don't think it would be wise to trade him because I don't think he's hit his ceiling, but I think Jarrett Allen's hit his ceiling, and I don't know that he's a playoff player. I think he's an 82-game player, not a 16-game player. which that is still really, really helpful in a lot of situations. But I think when you are at where the Cavs are at, now might be the time to move on from him. And I do think that they can be better by playing Evan Mobley at center more frequently than they have in the past. So I think that is one area where they still have some upward mobility. If they don't trade Allen, I think that some of the supporting pieces probably need to be switched in and out, just because running it back again after losing in 5 games in the second round, probably not the place they thought they'd be.
All right, I'll buy it as well. I don't need to add to that. You're the expert. I agree with you. I think Evan Mobley at center is the future of that team, and they need him to be physically ready for that. I would hope in turn, if they move on from Jared Allen, they add just someone like a Mitchell Robinson, frankly, like high level rebounder, high level rim protecting backup big, and just a little more physicality across the board. All right, buy or sell this year. I obviously little harder to argue this down 0-2, but let's just say like when they enter the conference finals, this will be the New York Knicks' best shot at an NBA title, given who the other 3 teams are in the Final Four and given where they're at on their aging curve.
I'm going to buy that. Like, I don't think that it's by some wide margin, but I don't think OKC is going anywhere. I think having a year in which, and I'm not a believer in Philly, but Philly's not part of the conversation. Boston is eliminated by the Knicks, deserve credit for that. And I guess the reasoning for selling might be the Boston Celtics will not be this good next year, but also avoiding a 64-win Cavs team in the conference finals. It's hard for me to see a better opportunity, but I didn't view them as the favorites at any point just because I thought, oh, well, congratulations to Oklahoma City as soon as they beat the Denver Nuggets, because I don't see how a team's beating them.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell it just because I think they need a coach that will optimize them. But to your point, incredibly good health from guys like Cat and OG Anunoby. They stayed healthy throughout these playoffs. I mean, surely nicks and bruises across the board, but relatively healthy when so many teams didn't. And because they've failed to optimize their lineups, they are wasting what I would consider like a third straight incredibly elite playoff performance from Jalen Brunson. There's an argument right there with your guy, Donovan Mitchell, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Giannis, of course, in a very small group for the best offensive player in the playoffs over the last 3 years. And when you have that, like the title should be the expectation. I think they have the talent for it this year. I think they arguably have the most talented starting 5 of any team left, and yet does not seem like they're going to get it done. So that's incredibly disappointing for them. Eastern Conference Atlantic Division rival. We'll end with this. Buy or sell, the Sixers should trade the number 3 pick for immediate help in this year's draft.
I'm going to sell because I think they should trade Joel Embiid for whatever they can trade him for. I think that Philly should blow things up. I don't trust Embiid to ever be healthy throughout a playoff run. I think that Philly's future is Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, whoever they can get with number 3. And maybe if you can somehow get somebody to take Paul George's contract, you'll be in much better shape 3 years from now than you are right now if you're Philly.
Yeah, I buy it as well. Add Quentin Grimes to that mix. He was incredible for them down the stretch of the season. Seems like they've had a good couple of drafts. Like a lot of the younger guys who got time off their bench, including Justin Edwards, were incredibly impressive in limited time. And I don't know how you can bet on Joel Embiid. If they want to, if just because the ceiling is there, if they want to try one more year, I get it. I would keep that number 3 pick. If you're a strong believer, if not, I'd make a trade back in the draft, maybe to 8 to get someone like Con Knippel and still bring in some young talent while maybe bringing in another asset. But that is it for this edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Check out Danny Cunningham all summer long and into next season on the Locked On Cavs podcast. Check me out, maybe crying some more real tears on the Locked On Knicks podcast. Until then, be good. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On NBA Game Night.